Kenya Mons, Matiba. We have our panelists in the studio. Of course, we want to hear them also eulogizing with, of course, the family of the late Kenneth Matiba here from NTV. Also, we wish the family our deepest sympathy and sincere condolences as well. Allow me to introduce our panelists today. We have in studio with us Senator Isaac Mwaura, who's a nominated senator. Also, we do have with us Senator Moses Kajwang from Homa Bay. We do have with us Dr. Esele Sibiu, who's a member of parliament from Tongaren, also Secretary General of Ford Kenya. We have also with us Dr. Shem Ochodho, who's a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. We're eagerly awaiting for Senator Irungu Kangata to join us, who's a senator from Muranga. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right, just maybe going back to history or harking back to history, you can tell us what is your fond memories about Kenneth Matiba? Also, as we remember him, you know, as a bastion of democracy in this country. Let's begin with you, Dr. Shem Ochodho.
Debarl, allow me to join Kenyans on behalf of myself, my family, and the Kenya Diaspora Alliance to eulogize and pass our condolences to Madam Edith, Evie, and the wider Matiba family. It's very sad that we lose Matiba at a time when we're so short of true heroes and heroines, those who mean well truly for this country. He's suffered a lot for this country in many respects, business-wise, politically, and the like. And we are hoping that the most we who are left alive can do is to continue with the good journey he had walked. I remember Matiba had the comfort of any successful businessman. He didn't have to soil his hands in politics, but for the love of his country. And this came out very strongly yesterday as I was listening to Mishi Njeru Kathangu, who worked very closely with him, and Mzee Charles Rubia. I was very encouraged that even in the state of mind and age that Rubia is, he could still come out as a patriot and say, I am very concerned about the apparent as clawing back the gains, that democratic gains that we made. I am hoping that our leaders are listening and will take cue, and that the passing on of Matiba, together with the handshake, will give us the better Kenya we want for all in our lifetime.
Right, let's hear from Dr. Esele Sibiu.
Thank you, Debarl. I will also join my voice in condoling with the Matiba family. Indeed, it's a great loss to the whole country, and that includes the sporting fraternity, where Matiba was a major player in the sporting fraternity. And I would say that Matiba has paid the ultimate price, because his demise at this time can be linked clearly to the stroke he got when he was in detention. And as Shem Ochodho says, for a man of his wealth to have agreed to risk everything for the sake of this country, it says a lot about his character and what he valued in life. Indeed, it's a big lesson, because you realize that whenever we have political issues in this country, many wealthy people would like to stay aloof and in fact blame everything on the politicians. But people like Matiba, people like Rubia, took it upon themselves to ensure that we get a multi-party state. It's unfortunate that we are losing him at this time, when indeed we are going through one of those turbulences in our political scene, where there's clawing back of the political space. There's even talk of benevolent dictatorship, which does not go well with multipartyism. I think this should be a wake-up call to us as Kenyans, that indeed we need to stand for our country under whatever circumstances, the same way that Kenneth Matiba did, for us to eventually attain the multi-party democracy that we enjoy.
Right. Let's hear from Moses Kajwang.
Thank you and good morning. I also join my colleagues in conveying my condolences to the family, friends, the people of Kiharu, you know, the entire nation, on the loss of an icon, Kenneth Matiba. And Debarl, I believe I also speak on behalf of the people of Homa Bay, who today enjoy certain freedoms, freedoms that would not have been possible were it not for the sacrifices of great men like Kenneth Matiba. Matiba was broken in 1991, and that is when it is reported he had the stroke when he was in detention. If you look at the demographics of this country, a lot of people were born past 1991. What this tells you is that there is a generation of Kenyans and a huge population that might not have related directly with the achievements and the struggles of Matiba. There is a group of people in this country that might not even realize that the freedoms they have today, to be able to say anything they want to say on social media, to be able to make all kinds of decisions whether to participate or not to participate in an election. These are freedoms that were occasioned by people who sacrificed everything. And Debarl, there is an issue that was raised, I think, yesterday by one of the people who eulogized Matiba. Yes. And he said Matiba did not die a natural death because at the age of 85, and we have many young men at that age of 85. Matiba was an avid sportsman. He was a very active person. And Matiba died as a result of state persecution. This was not a natural death. And we must ask ourselves, did Matiba gain recognition for his contribution to the struggle, for his contribution to democracy in this country? A bigger question would come up. Did Matiba win the 92 elections? And I know in his death, a lot of analysts are going to go back to the petition of 1992, to the reports of observers in 1992, to find out whether it is possible to accurately pinpoint who won the elections. Of course, there is the official results, but then there is the opinion of the people who observed those elections. But I do hope that also as we eulogize Matiba, we'll be able to relate his accomplishments to the current generation that is in dire need of inspiration and in dire need of heroes that they can emulate. Right, thank you. And of course also the picture that we have on the screen there, this is the Minister of for Transport and Communications, Mr. Kenneth Matiba. Mr. Kenneth Matiba, second right there in front, inside Nyayo bus during his tour on Matatu routes in Nairobi City. With him also branch chairman of Matatu Owners Association, and we can see them inside that particular Nyayo bus. And of course we know the entry, this was then, but now Nyayo bus also is coming back as well. Let's hear from Isaac Maura. How do you remember the late Kenneth Matiba?
Thank you, Debarl. I have very good memories of Kenneth Matiba as someone who inspired a lot of, passion, belief in self-determination, a true doyen of multi-party politics. That time I was a very young boy, but I remember, hearing that Matiba is coming from London, as if, it is the second coming of Jesus Christ. It was really big. I mean, everybody was talking about it. Where I come from, I remember when he was doing the campaigns and we would get out in the streets to welcome him. So much so that Matiba really was a great icon. I remember the day that Ford had to vote whether who was going to be the leader between Jaramogi and Kenneth Matiba. And I remember, the rural folk, I could meet people saying we are going to separate the two to know actually who is going to lead, this big party. Although finally that party really split. But you can see, I remember how Matiba was the leader of the official opposition with 31 members of parliament, how he would make technical appearance because he couldn't believe in KANU and the win of KANU. I remember a Matiba who, after the 1992 general elections, just J.J. Kamotho was so miffed that then all-powerful Secretary General of KANU said that even a dog could have been elected on Fodasili as long as it had worn a T-shirt of the party. So that is how strong Matiba was, a great icon. And if you look at even his history, he really excelled as the first permanent secretary rising to a cabinet secretary or cabinet minister for that matter, and also a very great entrepreneur, you know, having interests in farming, in schools like Hillcrest and what have you. So he is really somebody we look up. In fact, Debarl, when we were young, there was even a myth that all 10 shilling notes, not coins now, belong to Kenneth Matiba. That is what, you know, we used to regale about him. So really, this is a great icon, and as it has been said, there are many who may not identify with him. In fact, I'm sure the people are, some of them would wonder, who is this guy? But really, this is a great icon. I would want even to propose, and I wish my friend Irungu Karata was here, that Murang'a University should be named after him. This is a great Kenyan, and I find a cunning resemblance of names, because Nelson Mandela is called Madiba, but actually in his hometown, in the Eastern Cape, they pronounce it as Matiba. You know, and that sounds very close to Matiba. Maybe if you look at the history of names, you may find that because these are Bantu names, they could have the same meaning, you know, long ago. So really, this is a great icon, and really, for sure, we should give him a great state send-off. All
right. Of course, we know the battles that we've seen that he has been fighting, especially with the state in concerning also his properties as well. We ran some of, you know, some of the headlines that we just picked from the archives as well. This was during his, you know, his fight within the parties. And here it says Kenneth Matiba was yesterday suspended from the ruling Kenya African National Union by the party's Murang'a branch executive. The executive committee chaired by the district chairman, Joseph Kamodo, endorsed the recommendation of the sub-branch that the Kiharu MP be expelled from the party. Can any one of you maybe remember why he was expelled from the party, so we can see the genesis of or why he went to other parties as well? Let's just begin with you, Dr. Shemochodo, if you may be privy to that information.
Debarl, I may not exactly remember, but it's not difficult to discern why he would have been expelled from the party. Anybody who was seen like not towing the KANU line, the President Moi line at that time, would be a pariah. Therefore, I'm not surprised he was expelled. But allow me also, I would concur with Mheshimiwa Mwaura that the icon that Ken Matiba was, it's vital that we immortalize him by recognizing some major national institution renaming it Matiba. I would only be opposed to that being Murang'a, because Matiba went way beyond. It was a national icon. I would be very happy if an institution, say in Kilifi or in Bungoma, where my brother here comes from, is renamed Matiba, because he went way beyond. That would be commendable. But also, I must say, last week I was sharing with one of the right-hand people to Ken Matiba, Bidan Bugwa, and we were saying, how is Mzee doing? We need to go and see him. I wish we went to see him then, because we would have hopefully had a last word from him. It's very sad for some of us who worked closely with him in the late 90s, early 2000, that a lot that is gone with into the grave. But also that he was a man who stood up for what's right. I do know that increasingly we have politicians who are compliant. I really hope that we will retrace back the route that our patriots, particularly those who fought along to bring independence, had to live with to give us a better Kenya for all. I am also alive to the fact that, as Honorable the late Kamodo JJ said, that even a dog would be elected. I am hoping that those are no days we want to go back to. I think Matiba fought so hard to bring about multipartism, along other politicians. But I think they forgot to take multipartism to areas they come from. Central and Nyanza. A lot of people from Nyanza fought very hard for multipartism, but we forgot to take it to our backyards. So I am hoping that, again, in remembrance for Matiba, I don't think Matiba would have wanted even dogs to be elected in his party. But I don't remember Matiba as having been one of those politicians who impose leaders. There are a lot like that who impose leaders around the country, particularly in Nyanza and Central. I am hoping that they will pick cue from Matiba and let the people decide. Matiba would be very easily recalled for, remember, let the people decide. When they had a problem with Mzee Jaramogi, Jaramogi's team wanted the leader of the Ford fraternity elected through a college. Matiba preferred, let it be the people to decide. I think that should be the rallying call, and let it be real, genuine, not just what we say, because increasingly, Debarl, we have leaders who say, well, we'll stand for one Kenya, a united Kenya, an inclusive Kenya. But I think our problem is we are moving away from the problem of exclusion to the problem of hypocrisy. Leaders say what they don't mean.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Eseli.
I would think that headline, now Muranga branch suspends Matiba.
Yes.
For whatever reason, should scare Kenyans even now. Because there's been this clawing back of the political freedoms that we do enjoy. And in fact, some people have gone ahead to say they want just 2 big parties. And you can imagine if one of the people in those 2 big parties is being done what was being done to Matiba at that time. So I think that headline is very telling coming at this time, and I think it should be publicized even more so that Kenyans open their eyes and they know that an icon like Matiba has paid the ultimate price for fighting to ensure that there's multi-party democracy in the country. And I think it's important that we look at that. And I would encourage the young people, perhaps somebody needs to research and write on Matiba properly so that the young people can also read about him, so that they can understand where this country has come from and where it is. Because the problem we are facing in this country right now, majority of the electorate never really suffered the brunt of one-party state, never really suffered the brunt of dictatorship. So they cannot, see it as what it is. And they are the ones who would clap very loud, and shout very loudly, welcoming the so-called benevolent dictatorship. And I think this kind of a good autobiography of Matiba, which can then educate these young people. And not to forget that I'm sure, even as we mourn Matiba, the family has lost the greatest, because Matiba was larger than life. And I'm sure the family is very affected. And I would suggest that as Kenyans, we give the family the respect that they deserve. We give the family all the cooperation that they deserve. Not forgetting that recently, the courts have tried to compensate Matiba for the financial loss that he might have gone through.
Yes.
But that is still not adequate, because what he lost was much more. But I think he's one of the people that we should encourage all Kenyans to emulate, because many people feel insulated with wealth, that they cannot delve into politics. They cannot, even when things are going wrong, they dare not lift a finger, because it's not them who are being affected. But people like Matiba, people like Rubia stood their ground. And I think this is the time to recognize them and encourage others not to let things go wrong because they are not affected as such.
All right, and of course, the issue of Charles Rubia, Kenneth Matiba being detained, and what we know, he came out from the prisons, of course, in a very poor health and state, which has actually led to his demise as well. In terms of compensation, of course, we know 945 million shillings is what the case now decided to compensate Matiba, but still that is very dismal. But there is an issue of reparation, and I know also in Parliament right now there is a bill which is coming up on reparation. We know the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission who came up with a report. There's so many people, and Matiba is just one of them, that we know they are adversely affected because of detention, because of torture, but still they are languishing, in poverty right now, yet the state has not really compensated. And I think him being the beacon of, and a bastion of fighting for democracy, this will bring out also the debate right now. In terms of compensation and the way it has also taken a very long, protracted time, we know the story of hotels and also him losing a huge chunk of his property as well to, because of debt as well. How then do we put out a figure who is maybe an epitome of, you know, what we really stand for, you know, human rights, an epitome of democracy. How do we treat such an icon? Do we just acknowledge him posthumously right now, while he's actually now, yes, going down to the grave? Maybe these are questions that we need to answer on the other side of a break. Welcome back. You're watching This Is the Point here on AM Live. We continue with the conversation. Of course, Kenya is mourning the death of Kenneth Matiba, who died yesterday after a long, prolonged illness at the Karen Hospital. And of course, we were just hearing from our panelists. Allow me to introduce them again to you if you're just joining us this morning. I'm holding court this morning with Senator Isaac Maura, who is a nominated senator. We do have with us Senator Moses Kajwang from Homa Bay. We do have with us Dr. Eseli Simiu, who is the Secretary General of Ford Kenya and also Member of Parliament from Tongaren. Also, we are holding court this morning with Dr. Shemo Chodo, who is the chairman of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, eagerly awaiting for also Senator Irungu Kangata to join us this morning as well. So, in terms of compensation, where we left the conversation at, maybe we can pick up with you, Moses Kajwang. 945 million shillings is what he has been compensated for, you know, torture, and what he went through, you know, in the torture chambers as well. Do you think that is enough? And in terms of reparation and the bill that we know right now that also is in the National Assembly, which is being sponsored by women rep of Western Issue, this is Gladys Chole as well. You can just weigh in on that as well.
Well, it can never be enough. What sacrifice the Matiba gave to this nation cannot be compensated financially. And that is how civilization has always been. You know, Debarl, if you go to certain Western capitals, you'll walk on certain streets and you'll find several statues of men and women who have made a significant contribution to the development of that nation state, to the advancement of that nation state. In Kenya, we don't have such. We could recognize Matiba through financial compensation for businesses lost, but there is much more that we could do as a nation. And it speaks to the soul of this country that we tend to ignore heroes when they are living, unless they are in politics.
Yes.
In fact, the only heroes who are given relevant and proper recognition and treatment are those who have stuck around and those who have managed to remain in elective politics. Those ones we call Waheshimiwas, and we give them vehicles depending on their stature in the politics of this land. But the minute they fade out of the politics, we ignore them. For Matiba, everyone stood aside as sharks and hyenas stripped off his property. Hillcrest School, which is a huge investment.
Yes.
If you go to the South Coast, if you go to Diani, the Alliance Hotels, the Alliance Hotels in Diani,
yes,
a wonderful place, and that is where Najib Balala did the famous skydive. I went there last year, and the place is desolate. Mm-hmm. It is a huge treasure, which we just kept quiet as sharks took this away from Matiba. And then on the day he will be buried, Debarl, you will see the kind of things that Malema was talking about in South Africa. The people who incarcerated Matiba will be there. The people who looted his property will be there. Mm-hmm. The people who ignored him in life will be there, shedding crocodile tears. We even came up with an act of parliament to help us in identification and award of heroes in this country. We have not had the spine to implement it. Mm-hmm. Going back to the earlier flashback that you put on the screen, when Matiba was kicked out of Kanu, what was his crime? His crime was that he had the guts to resign from his cabinet position. And that was unheard of. Matiba resigned. And why did he resign? Because he was being undermined by members of the cabinet. And he felt that he could not continue sitting the same cabinet with Oloa Ringo and Njiru, who were fighting him internally. Those were days of single-party autocracy. Then we moved into multipartyism. The question we must ask ourselves is whether we have really advanced, whether the single-party autocracy is still with us in a multi-party system. Because even today, let me tell you, if you are in a political party or in a political formation and you are to take a position that is contrary to the general direction of that political formation, you will be chucked the way Matiba was chucked in Moranga back in 1989. So we have not learned a lot of lessons from our past. But the treatment of Matiba has been pathetic, because Matiba, again, was one of those political figures whose property and acquisition of wealth could be traced. There was an audit trail. When he was in government, when he went into cabinet as a young permanent secretary, I think at the age of 31, Matiba resisted the urge to take advantage of his position, to take kickbacks to support his business. When he wanted to go into business, he left politics and went into private business, going into the beer business with the East Africa breweries. Today, you find MCAs, senators, members of parliament, and governors who, in a span of 3, 4, 5 years, have acquired wealth that cannot be traced. And we are told it's okay, I'm a hustler, I'm the child of a poor man, no one questions my poverty, no one should question my wealth. Matiba is a shining example to young people and everyone in this country that you can be a politician, you can be a businessman, you can create wealth properly. Unfortunately, it is also a bad example of neglect, not just by the state, but the entire political class and the entire country.
All right. And of course, we have that particular picture on the screen. This is where Kenneth Matiba was with Minister Eliud Mamunga. We can see him pouring or pours himself a glass of Tusker Premium during the launch or the launching of the new beer at Nairobi's Hilton Hotel. He was a chairman of the Kenya breweries as well. Maybe we can also hear from Senator Isaac Mwaura in terms of what you're saying, reparation, and also him opening the doors for many who have been tortured, and compensation, and the TGRC report that up to now we don't know what is encapsulated in that particular report. Could this also be the climax of it? Yes, that we want to know, him being the face of what he went through and the epitome, as I said earlier, of torture within the Nyayo House chambers. Can this be the moment that we can actually inquire and ask where the report is?
The issue about Kenneth Matiba is really a story about courage, because he would have decided to continue to enjoy his wealth and to fizzle out into private business.
Yes.
And wait for an opportune moment where then he would run for president. In fact, Matiba is credited for having encouraged Mwai Kibaki to resign with him. But Kibaki decided not to resign with him. And sometimes it leaves a sour taste in the mouth, because it is Kibaki who later on became president.
Yes.
If you look at even the 1992 election results, quite interesting. The opposition had over 60% of the vote. But it's because there was a split between the three major opposition candidates, Matiba, Mwai Kibaki, and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. If they had all stuck together, definitely they would have sent Kanu into oblivion. And this is very important, because the YK92 was formed ostensibly to ensure that the opposition did not win, and the looting that happened then, the country has never really been able to recover, because it also, precipitated other scandals such as the Golden Bag. But as they say, pride is the sacrifice you make to acquire. And indeed, Debarl, change is owed unto those who truly sacrifice, not because they are supposed to amass wealth or fame, but they choose to pay, the ultimate price. Now we have a situation where we have politics without principle.
Yes.
People who are in the political arena to accede to, ethnic, jingoism. And Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia decided to stand up and speak truth to power. They paid very dearly. I don't think the 900 million, obviously, will be able to compensate them, but at least it can give them some sense of decency, some life that is, not living like pariahs. And remember, he also pioneered in journalism. People may forget this, but Kalamka Limited was the owner of People Daily, People Weekly, which I think it used to go by the title fair, frank, and fearless, you know, in those days. And of course, they were even doing art, if you remember Isaac Mwamto and Susan, you know, and even their music. You know, Kenneth Matiba really left a great legacy. Mm-hmm. But I think we have what we call historical revisionism. It is very easy now to eulogize him. And the sad story where we would want to imagine, even with the enactment of the Heroes Act, yes, that we would have seen a different way of doing things with now the death of Matiba and others who will follow. But I would want to still encourage Kenyans, you know, Debarl, that we must not tire in making those sacrifices for the betterment of this country. If all of us decided to be happy about the positions that we occupy, the trappings of power, and the warmth, you know, and the bubble that comes with it, then we will not be able to move this country going forward. And I think at this point in time, even going to the discussions that you may want to engage us going forward, yes, is that we must be ready to have new Matibas, you know, in this country. People who are going to stand up for what is right. People who are going to say that indeed we need to do things differently if at all we are going to change this country.
But do you think we have that particular space right now, or is being clawed back, as we have Dr. Selling, you know, alluding to, that yes, that particular space where you can actually speak your mind without a fear of being, you know, without any encumbrance maybe from the state, is it there?
I think that we must not give up. Right now, what we have, the political parties that we have do not inspire that kind of space. In fact, we all are told to aspire to be people like Mandela, to be like Martin Luther King Jr., but there were poverty-producing politics which are anchored on ethnic jingoism and chauvinism. It becomes extremely difficult because these political parties are not owned truly by the people. They are owned by a few who will tell you to get out.
Thank you.
Just like, you know, Keanu advised Moi that Matiba never loses in any contest because he had defeated him. And as a consequence, you can see now what the state did to Matiba. So really, but we must not tire.
We must not tire, truly. Yes. Then we have MPs failed to save Matiba's hotels. This is what we've been discussing as well. But the MPs had a handy opportunity and, of course, a sporting chance to try and save his hotels that we know they were actually being auctioned. And this was way back in 2001, May 18th, and crucial meeting put off. It says that receivers pushed ahead yesterday with plans to close Mr. Kenneth Matiba's Alliance hotels, despite a parliamentary committee's efforts to broker a meeting to resolve the dispute. The Parliamentary Committee on Finance, Tourism and Trade met in Nairobi to question Finance Minister Chris Okemo, but agreed to meet after 10 days when Tourism Minister Nicholas Biwott, in whose docket the hotel issue falls. And that story continued also on page 2 of the Daily Nation. So where sometimes we're torn in between. Yes, if sometimes you've mismanaged your properties and your finances, do you go to the state to actually try and bail you out? We have these people that we know they're icons, they're heroes, like Paul Ngei as well, but he died a poor man. And this is a state that we can see also that where Matiba is as well. After all his properties, you know, they were being auctioned because of the huge debt that he could not service. We can briefly weigh in on that as well. Let's hear from Dr. Shemochodo. Where do we have that even keel, where we have to save the face of our heroes, but still also they have to take responsibility of their mismanagement of finances, their debts as well?
Debarl, I remember, I think that happened during the 8th Parliament.
During the 8th Parliament.
An attempt was made to save Matiba's properties. It's unfortunate that the MPs didn't succeed at the time. Soon after, of course, we were heading into elections, and then, of course, the 9th Parliament came into being. So I'm really saddened that we didn't succeed. But Debarl, allow me to say, perhaps it's time we start paying more attention and appreciating and recognizing our heroes when they're still alive. I do know, and it's not just the political heroes. Daudi Tonje, General Tonje. 2 years ago, the Kenya diaspora did vote for him as Kenya's national hero of all times. He did many fascinating things. Many may recall that even when President Moi wanted him to continue to be in charge of our armed forces, he said, no, I can't be the one to go against my own rules. We were also informed there's a point that the government wanted to give him parcels of land in Eldoret, I don't know, 20 or how many acres. He said, thank you, Excellency, but my 5 acre is good enough for us. You know, there's so many Kenyans who are outstanding, have done many outstanding things, like Tonje, like Conjestina, you remember the boxer, like Professor Calestos Juma, who we buried recently.
Yes.
But what do we have to show for them? I was privileged to have played my modest role. Obviously, I can't be anywhere close to the suffering that Matiba and others went through, but I was secretary of the Gay Intervention Committee.
Yes.
We were lucky in a way to save his properties at the time. I don't know what happened thereafter. I must also say I was glad that I played roles while in Parliament, bringing back the issue of Shujaa Dedan Kimathi. I am glad that we have a statute now in his honor. I still remain in touch with the family. When Mama Mudhoni was launching her book, I was happy to be there as a keynote speaker. And I did small things for the Onekos, for the Kagias. I wish we would have done more. Even in Parliament, I sponsored the motion on the Heroes Fund, which unfortunately KANU and NDP at the time conspired to shoot down. I think we need to relook at that. I have to confess I haven't looked at the Heroes Act, what it has. But some of those heroes we are counting, and many others that Kenyans may not even know about. I feel so sad when I see people being decorated, heroes and heroines, and you start wondering, who is this? What has she done? Mostly they're people from particular villages. I really think we need to be sure who is a hero and who is a heroine. We need to be we need to be clear so that there are standards that if somebody is called a hero, nobody can. It's so compelling that you cannot question that fact. So in terms of reparation, I think people like Mzee Robia, we need to compensate them both financially as well as even just acknowledging the roles they played and even apologizing. People like Chris Musando and the others, these are Kenyan heroes who have fallen along the wayside. I really think that the passing on of Matiba be a wake-up call so that we start giving befitting compensation to our leaders. I do appreciate that financial may not be sufficient, but sometimes it helps to cool the embers of the families. So both financial and whatever other means that can be done to assuage them, because we must recognize as Kenyans, we wouldn't have been where we are without these leaders.
Right. Well, I'm not really privy to the Heroes and Heroine Act right now. Right, I presume it's an act, sorry, for my ignorance. Yes, but what does it say when it comes to, issuing, such accolades and awards posthumously to people here who have died? What about if they're still alive? What happens? Why should we not really recognize them?
It's about recognizing heroes and heroines even while they are alive. So I think it's a question of operationalizing it. But even as we operationalize it, we need to soul search ourselves as Kenyans. What kind of society are we bringing up? Because as people from the lake say, fish rots from the head. Really, what happens at the top decides a lot how the country will be. Because right now we have a terrible psyche in this country, which is, forget and move on, accept and move on, that kind of thing. Yet there are things that we need to tackle head on for us to actually have that catharsis and eventually be a society that really values, has some values. Because right now, if you ask yourself, what are our national values? Do we have any? What you see everywhere is just indiscipline and, both financial indiscipline, both social indiscipline everywhere. I think it's time we actually sat down and looked at these things properly. Because if we did, then heroes like Matiba will automatically find their place in this country. But right now, you'll have to really, as Senator Maura said, to name maybe a university in Murang'a but you don't see anybody else clamoring to name an institution after Matiba. Yet he was such an important factor in Kenya turning the page of dictatorship to a multi-party democracy. Because I don't think without him, I don't know whether we could have managed, because all the forces had to come together. Matiba, Rubia, Jaramogi, and all those, they had to come together to be able to ensure that we get that change. But all that said, the problem with our politics is that there are those who join politics. Everybody joins politics for different reasons. But I think we have too many who join politics to create wealth. And that is dangerous for a country. Because if the only reason you are in politics is to amass wealth, then there is something terribly wrong with the social fabric of this country. And that boils down now to the electoral process itself. How are these candidates identified? That is very critical, because the national psyche will be driven by the leaders, and the leaders at the moment are sitting in the National Assembly, they are sitting in the Senate. Now those will be the people to drive the national psyche. Now if they appear to have no what do you call it, no values to instill in the state, then you don't expect any values in the state. So that brings into question our whole electoral process as it is, that we need to look at it. So that you are having people who can actually introduce some social values in our state, so that people can actually have some otherwise right now, it doesn't matter how you make money, so long as you make the money. And as he said, they will question you and say, well, you never questioned my poverty, why are you questioning my wealth? You know? So this it's become vogue now to say that I used to sell cabbage, I used to sell what, you know, that has become a good tag for any person with wealth to state how far back they came from. I think we are losing our national values, and unless we really look at them carefully, we sit down and soul search as a country. Because if we did, then we'll understand who people like Matiba were. That despite his wealth, despite his privileged position in life, he was still able to risk all to get us to where we are. That tells you what kind of person he is. Do we have many more of those in this country? Are they there? Or are they there and they have decided maybe the society is not worth risking for because of the way we are behaving as a country? So we need to really look at this carefully, because as Senator Kajwang said, it's surprising that one joins politics a short while ago, and within no time they're something else. Like the late Olentimama said, that somebody came in here wearing a suit like they slept in, and now they are wearing designer shoes, designer whatever. You know, these are the dangers that this country is facing. Right. There is enough for all of us in this country, but there isn't enough for a few people's greed.
Right, thank you very much. Let's hear from Senator Kajwang briefly.
Well, Debarl, you asked about the Heroes Act. One thing the Heroes Act did was to try to formalize the process of identifying heroes for state awards. So there were certain committees that were established. But interestingly, these committees have also decided that Githeriman is a national hero and not Kenneth Matiba. So, you know, sometimes we want to formalize absurdity through legislation. And we need to breathe new life into that act of parliament. The intention was good, but the manner in which you're operationalizing it is not proper. If you come to parliament, nowadays parliament, you know, independently decides who they are going to honor and who's going to get, I think, an EGH or some other notation next to their names. And it always goes to the leadership of the houses. It does not matter whether Eseli Simiu sponsored a bill that had a significant impact on the lives of the people, is likely not to be nominated for an award. So the Heroes Act has not, you know, worked very well for us to be able to recognize those heroes. But let's go back to what Matiba stood for. One thing people don't remember is that 1992 was the very first presidential elections in Kenya. The generation, the majority in this country, think that we've been doing elections since 1963. We've never had presidential elections in this country. The first presidential election was in 1992. And we saw what happens when Kenyans are given the opportunity to make a decision. KANU won by 30-something%. And that is a victory that the historians will dispute, because there was ethnic violence in Rift Valley, there was ballot box stuffing, there was serious intimidation, there was serious divide and rule, there was a white Youth for KANU 92 pouring money and destabilizing the economy. What KANU tried to do to prevent the will of the people to prevail is something that this country has not recovered from today. But what did Matiba stand for when he decided to run for the presidency? Definitely democracy was one of the things that he stood for. But there was also the issue of equity. Historically, the Kikuyu community, who were the biggest business people in Nairobi and in Central Province, had been crushed by the administration that came in after Moi. And if you look at the kind of numbers that Matiba got in Nairobi and in Central, it tells you that there was a desire for equity, there was a desire for inclusion. He also fought for economic justice. And it is unfortunate that as a private player, a private practitioner, in an economy that said that it was neither capitalist nor socialist, but it was in the middle, would treat an entrepreneur and an investor in the manner in which they treated Matiba. You've seen in 2001, Parliament tried to rescue his empire, and it didn't work. Now, 2001 was at the twilight of Daniel Arap Moi's regime. Remember, Daniel Arap Moi and Matiba were friends. Matiba, at some point, was a permanent secretary in Daniel Arap Moi's ministry. In fact, it is on record that when Daniel Arap Moi started his transport and logistics business, which is huge today, it was Matiba who helped him incorporate the business and who helped him even to get a contract at Kenya Breweries, where Matiba was a chairman then. And you ask yourself, what kind of politics are we building in this country where there is so much vendetta that even if your good friend was to be in trouble, you'd rather he dies, you'd rather his empire collapses than to rescue him? We must build some new politics where we can disagree politically, but I would not want to take your life. I would not want to take your property. I would not celebrate when you're going down, when auctioneers are running all over your property. Matiba could have been rescued not just by Parliament, he could have been rescued by his friends. He could have been rescued by business partners. But we created an environment where Matiba was toxic. You could not afford to be associated with him. You did not want to be seen as a businessman, to be advancing him alone to be able to rescue his empire. I think that's the wrong kind of politics. And in this era of handshakes and in this era of reconciliations, we must try to build a kind of system where, yes, we disagree ideologically, but in that disagreement, I will not go personal on you. I will not want you to lose your life. I will not want you to lose your property. Right.
Maybe as we're winding up also on that particular topic of course, eulogizing Kenneth Matiba, the issue of prison reforms, because he is a victim, of course, of the prisons here in Kenya. And since then, up to now, there hasn't been any much change. You can see some of our leaders also who were taken there when we had the head speech 6. Yeah, when they went to Pangani police station. Miguna also has been at the police station as well. And there is such a poor state of our prisons right now. Since Matiba's time and now, they've promised, yes, we shall have prison reforms, but nothing has actually changed so far. It is just, you know, people and MPs speaking from both sides of the mouth.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. I was speaking to the one in charge of the Bungoma prisons, Mr. Karadi. And he gave me a very solid state of affairs on what is happening there. And recently we saw the new PS Cheroyot trying to cook ugali for prisoners. And he said that you require to eat a lot for you to to do the ugali. And they are suggesting that you know, prisons need to be self-sustaining, and that is actually something that needs to be encouraged, because the seats we sit on in Parliament actually have been made from prisons. And I remember the debacle some time back where one each was costing 200,000 shillings. Anyway, so our prison, you know, places are not very good, and they don't actually encourage good health, ostensibly because we all think that prisons should be the worst place ever, not somewhere where somebody would want to go back to. And so I think there is really underfunding when it comes to the facilities. We've also, you know, grown now. We are 50 million Kenyans. Crimes are increasing. So there's something that still needs to be done in terms of the budget and also the construction of more facilities and even the staffing. I'm saying that because I come from Ruiru, and you know that is the biggest, you know, prisons base also in this country. But also, let me just give credit where it is due. For Dr. Shem Muchwodo to remain relevant, having been in the 8th Parliament, 4 parliaments later, I think we must give credit. It just only goes to show that he has something that this country needs to get from him. Because many politicians fade, immediately they lose their own political power. And in the same breath also celebrate people like Martin Shikuku, a guy who really, I also happened to have, you know, learned a lot from him when we served together in ODM, you know, way back in 2007, before he died. And this is a great Kenyan, because Martin Shikuku was the Secretary General of Kenneth Matiba. And I remember he was able to marshal over 600,000 votes from Western Province then to vote for Kenneth Matiba. You know, so this is a real icon, and he has a great, history and career, political career fighting. In fact, he used to be called the People's Watchman. So if you see the people who teamed up with Matiba, including the late George Denge, people like Bama Riz, we have forgotten all of these guys. You know, people who inspired a lot of liberation and freedom. Clarion Call, and so we need to really remember them, not just because they have died, but because for sure they contributed something. And in terms of objectivity, when we are giving state commendations, that is what we need to look at. You know, not somebody who is just pliant to the state. And just agreeing to what has been said here, I am very happy that apart from the issue of Githeri Man and the politics around that, the president refused to give these commendations to people in parliament who had pontificated themselves as having been over and above an average member of parliament, simply because they were chairs of committees, they served in this committee. In fact, one of them was bragging to me how he was going to be awarded. But I was very happy when he was not, because when I looked at his CV, he had not done anything in particular. And also that reminds me of my own story. When I was given the Chief of the Order of the Burning Spear for many things that I've done to fight for the marginalized, it did not come from Parliament. And Parliament was actually shocked when they saw my name there. So we need people who are objective. We need also to lessen that list, so that every year we award maybe less than 100 people who truly have made a contribution, in the society, so that also we give, status to these awards, and so that then we can remember our heroes. I remember Reverend Joya making a lot of noise around the time when they were called Shujas, and then they had to, go around the General Stadium saying hi to the crowds, and he was saying it's like a cow being led on a noose around, because, it is them who are walking around, rather than people, supplicating to them and respecting them. You see, even the way we do it. So those are things we need to look at, but it has been a very good attempt to recognize, heroes. And it's also good to give credit, because this bill was actually introduced by Emilio Odhiambo, somebody who has a civil society background. And Debarl, the civil society has lost it. Because when we, the political class, fail, and when reason is not prevailing, we would want to see a robust civil society that gives an alternative. The problem with our civil society is that it has joined us also in politics. It has become an appendage of political, sides. You see, these civil societies are aligned to Jubilee or NASA. So that is where the problem is. We need to revive a robust civil society that would encourage, politics of hygiene, but not this what I please call poverty-producing politics. And there's something that people miss, that even politicians, the reason why people go to politics to accumulate wealth is a fear of being poor, is a fear of being left like Matiba, vulnerable, you see? And the moment you start chasing wealth, when you're in parliament, what time will you have to think through bills that are going to be transformational? You will only be interested in primitive accumulation because it will help you survive in the next election, Debarl.
Thank you.
And also bribe the voters, you know, who are living hand to mouth, and so therefore you are assured of political power, and then we can celebrate you when you die because you hold a political position.
Right, thank you. Right, you're
talking about prison reforms?
Prison reforms, very briefly.
We used to call prisoners state guests, have been a state guest. As a student leader in 1982, did almost a year with a number of other today's eminent Kenyans in prison. The reforms within the prisons are sorely needed. I remember in those days at Industrial Area Prison, and thereafter, during the 8th Parliament, I was a regular at Kodiaga Prison and so on, because Moi was basically trying to vanquish opposition. I remember people used to carry chapatis in their boots to bring into prison. It's that bad, with Manila polythene paper. I don't know what they would use now. It was so dehumanizing because there are no mattresses. You sleep on the ground, on the hard, solid floor for whole night. I am hoping that things have changed since, but much more needs to be done. Much the same way that the national police reforms are required. I would say, while I wouldn't have wished death, what the state was doing at the time was stick and carrot. Stick to try to win you over. If you agreed, they would buy you. If you didn't, like Matiba, the worst that would happen, they would extinguish you. You'd die. And there are many cases like that. In as much as we still seem to be in a situation where there are extrajudicial killings, people just disappear. As we go through this transition, many more may happen, and I hope they don't, God forbid. But I'm reminded of the national values. Last week, the National Mediation Forum, to come to the defense of the civil society, met there looking at, one of the areas they looked at is the national values. You know, we have 17 values, and we're asking ourselves, what's the Kenyan national ID? When you meet a foreigner as a Kenyan, what do they first think of you? They are very positive things. They know we are runners, good athletes, we very good tourism, we very good in technology and so on, but we also have our bad. They look at Kenyans as corrupt, as thieves, as tribalistic. Wanakuuliza when Chikuyu or Luo, you know. I think we must pay a little more attention to our national values that appear in Article 10 of the Constitution. That there was a national task force led by Dr. Gerishon Mwiti that came up with recommendations. That report, like many others, is rotting somewhere. I think we need to bring it back, have it discussed by Kenyans, adopted, and then have it implemented. That is where we need to have a focus.
Right. And of course, just to read some of the reactions that we have on Twitter and Facebook as well, we have John Gidanga saying that Kenyans are at a crossroads, caught in a maze of marching in different directions to the extent of losing authentic national pride and true identity for personal gains. Hypocrisy is the name of the game. And we have also Kimathi Njebi saying, elected leaders, as usual, think best way to honor Matiba is naming concrete structures after him. My take is the best way to honor him is to jail his Kenyan persecutors who are alive. Also, we have John Gidang again saying it is sad that we no longer have patriotic nationalist of Kenneth Matiba's caliber. He, together with Charles Rubier and other, fought tooth and nail to usher in multi-party democracy. We have also Yambasa saying the compensation shall go a long way in wiping the consequences the family suffered. We have Benjamin Kimbereza saying, tuned in from Mangongo, Mombasa. We thank you, Benjamin. Also, we have Alan K say, whom are you waiting for to die so that you can name another university after him or her? A probing question there from Alan K. Also, Jeremiah Kariuki saying there are so many heroes and heroines of first and second and other freedom liberations. All of this, dead or alive, need to be recognized and compensated adequately. What we lose through corruption and bad governance is enough to cater for that. Also, we do have Roy Odhiambo saying, oh yeah, today you have hypocrites in your studio. So, Maura Isaac wants today Murang'a University to be renamed Kenneth Matiba University after he's dead. Why not when he was alive? So he is asking me to ask you this.
No, I think this is not a new debate. I'm just saying it now. But Irungu Kangata in the 11th Parliament actually introduced a motion to that effect. So it is not something that is new. I was actually in support of that. In fact, Debarl, in my own neighborhood, I had really contemplated, I had even discussed with some of my neighbors where we could even name our own local road to Kenneth Matiba. That is how passionate we have been about this gentleman. And I really hope that we do something about it. You know, if you go to Washington, there are no tall buildings, and I asked why. And I was given an answer. It's because they don't want to dwarf the memorials, like the Lincoln Memorial, of their heroes. If you go to, if you look at even the White House, it's a very small building, by the way. It looks big when it is amplified by television, but it's because, and you can even see the tables that Lincoln and others use is the same one that even Trump would use today. So we have not developed that culture. If, for example, if you read a book about Jeremiah Nyaga, The Mustard Seed, a very good memoir written by Irongo Thatia, it says that people like Daniel Moi and Roland Gala were staying in one room shack in Eastlands prior to independence. Why am I saying that? Because also we need to track how people have accumulated wealth, but also can we even trace where they used to live, Can we go back like the way would say Robben Island, that cell where Mandela was? So we have not developed, a very good, way of doing heritage. And I hope Rashid Echesa, the new minister in charge of heritage and the PS, Joseph Mkobe, with that we are going to do more around how to celebrate our heroes and to remember them.
All right, we have also Humble Mikey saying that empty talk that should have happened while he is alive so that he can see the recognition. Why do we wait to celebrate our heroes after they are dead? Also, we have also John Mudoka saying, oh, at this age we should celebrate him. Very few get that old. And remember also we're streaming live on Facebook as well, right? And our Twitter handle is AM Live NTV. And you can head over also to our Facebook profile as well for you to actually catch the show live if you're just stepping out of the house. But now